Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I am the guy who picked Eddie Alvarez to defeat Michael Chandler the first time. And I'm here to talk about Kevin Jousett versus Kiefer Crosbie. Kevin Jousett is 8-2 as a pro, 30 years old, and he's 3 inches taller than 33-year-old Crosbie, who is 10-3 as a pro. Jousett is the hometown guy here. He is a judoka first and foremost, but like every fighter, he can fight anywhere. He's definitely the more physical guy in this fight, I'd say. He's going to have physicality on his side. I know the taller guys are, well, they almost always are leaner and whatever, and maybe you could wrangle them around on the inside. But I think on the inside, Kevin Jousett would do maybe his best work against Kiefer Crosbie. Kevin Jousett is pretty damn strong, and again, being a judoka, the closer you are to the inside, to his hips, the closer you are to getting put on your ass. And also, Jousett, I've seen him do some really good work in the clinch. He's definitely, a dangerous guy on the inside. On the outside, you'd think, I'm assuming he has a reach advantage, although I don't know it here. But he's got 3 inches of height. He's probably the longer fighter, in addition to being the taller fighter. And he's got decent power, too. But it's just on the outside is where I've seen him have trouble on the feet. Even when he's not having too much trouble, he's not having too much success because he's generally slow and plodding, too upright, and often keeps his hands down. Just a lot of vulnerabilities there. He has 2 losses, one by TKO, one by decision. The decision is to Caleb Rideout, who beat him in a 5-round championship fight for whatever organization. I don't know, Hex or something. But don't quote me on that. But it was a fight in which Rideout won via movement and speed, basically. Striking on the outside. I thought his movement was responsible for almost all of his success in that fight. In the end, Kevin Jousett did get to him and get him down, hit a few takedowns towards the end of the fight, but wasn't able to make too much work for him and was just largely outpointed. His TKO loss comes to a fella named Jack Della Maddalena, who you might have heard of, and Jack beat him with a 2nd-round doctor stoppage. This was an ass-kicking, largely. Jack actually found a lot of success on the ground, took him down in addition to knocking him down, but had a lot of control time on top. But he also hurt him. Jack hurt him, dropped him twice, I believe, once with a single shot and the other time with a combination where he ripped his body, which I really think was responsible for the knockdown. But even though those are strikes against his durability, he was knocked down against Jack twice. It still bodes well for him overall, big picture-wise, I'd say, in that he wasn't legitimately finished by Jack Della Maddalena, who was having his way with him. And we've seen what it looks like when Jack has his way. And Kevin Jousett, it was stopped due to a cut, whatever it was, but he definitely wasn't out of the fight. He was still going there. And I think that's a strike for his durability, and definitely for his heart and everything else. But still, he was up against it there and outgunned. His 8 wins, he's got 4 by TKO, 4 by decision. I've seen him get some cool TKOs. He beat this guy Mark Ludi with a slam. The guy Mark took his back, and they were standing. He had the guy standing on his back, backpacking him, and he dove down a few times to slam him and break the hold, or his face or whatever, and instead he knocked him unconscious, which did break the hold. But it was just a really, really, really cool finish, and another great example of physicality, I want to say, for Kevin Jousett. He, in addition to being tough to knock out, is pretty tough to submit. This guy, Matt Myers, who's a capable fighter, put him in a tight rear naked choke at the end of a fight in which he was dominating. Kevin was dominating with the grappling. Had him in a few reverse triangles and whatever, but really working him from the top. And Matt Myers took his back and had him in a really tight rear naked choke at the end of that fight. And he survived, where it looked like there was no way he was going to survive for at least a second there. But he survived. And doing that deep into the fight, very deep into the fight, even if you're dominating, it's still impressive. It's a notch for the durability. He's doesn't have too many great victories. You know, those guys aren't bad that he just beat. He beat this one guy, Priscus Fogagnolo, who's got a very pretty record, but the guy's 40 years old and he was coming off a 4-year layoff. But still, deceptively tough because he had a pretty record. I forget who his other loss was to, but very, very respectable and never finished. And that guy was having success with Kevin Jousett. Even though he was half the size of him, he was still having success on the inside being the bully, but even on the outside a little bit, just reaching him. Because Kevin Jousett is, again, not the best striker on the outside. Slow, plodding, upright, whatever. But Kevin Jousett turned things around and did it with clinch strikes. Elbows in the clinch, roughing him up on the inside, using that physicality. And he ended up taking over and winning a 5-round decision down the stretch. But still, he's a guy that has distinct vulnerabilities that I do think Kiefer Crosbie can capitalize on. But I also think, in general, he's got, in this matchup, physicality on his side. And I think despite not having any submission victories, I expect him to be better on the ground than Kiefer Crosbie. And Kiefer Crosbie, he is 10-3 as a pro. He's got 5 TKO victories, 2 submissions, 3 decisions, and his 3 losses all come in Bellator. 1 by TKO, 1 by submission, 1 by decision, disqualification. The disqualification is a knee, an illegal knee. Whatever. It's almost like it never happened until it happens twice. Then it's a trait. And this guy's got to control himself or whatever. But that's not the case, so I'll overlook that loss. And I'll look at the other 2 losses. Charlie Leary TKO'd him. That was a doctor stoppage, much like Jack Della Maddalena. But I think Charlie Leary, in addition to being an inferior fighter to Jack Della Maddalena, came closer to finishing him. You know, Kiefer Crosbie actually came close to finishing Charlie early on. Almost had a finish, cracked him, and was all over him. Because the guy Kiefer is a really good, aggressive striker. I don't know if I'd say good, but he's definitely got a lot going for him offensively. But then the tide turned. Charlie survived and ended up cracking him and really working him towards the end of the fight where I was sure it was going to be finished. But he ended up surviving and the doctor stopped it in between rounds anyway. But despite surviving, much like Kevin Jousett did against Jack Della Maddalena, I'd have to say that fight has left me more concerned for the durability against for Kiefer Crosbie standing up to strikes than Kevin Jousett's loss. His other loss is to an excellent Bellator fighter, Georgi Karahanian, who's been a at or near the top of Bellator for the last 10 years or so. Very good fighter, and he submitted him in round 1 with an arm triangle choke. No shame in losing to that guy, but still, he was submitted. And again, I never harp on amateur careers, but when someone gets finished as an amateur, that's something I take with me. Kiefer Crosbie was finished a few times as an amateur via submission. One of them was to Rostam Akam, who's a good fighter, but still, he's been submitted twice. So overall, I think despite him being the guy with submission victories, again, going up against a judoka here, I trust him to be submitted. I trust him to get the submission less than I do Kevin Jousett. Hope I worded that right. Kiefer Crosbie's got really one good victory as a pro, and that's Alex Oliveira, the one name you'd recognize. Alex Cowboy Oliveira left the UFC last year, and he met Kiefer Crosbie, and Crosbie knocked him out. TKO'd him, really. Beat him up, had him dancing halfway around the octagon, and Alex Oliveira, who was a very seasoned fighter and had a lot of different physical tools and physical advantages over Kiefer Crosbie, wasn't savvy enough with all that to survive. The guy Kiefer marches you down. He's got good pop in his punches and good volume as well. He's a guy that will bring the fight to you, and I trust him to bring the fight to Kevin Jousett here. He also beat this guy, Brian Lona Joe, who I just had to mention. The guy, I think at the time they fought, he was 46 years old. He fought in the last Pride event in 2007. So I don't know what he's doing still fighting. I didn't even know he was. But, yeah, I guess things weren't going his way in his mid to late 40s. But, yeah, Kiefer Crosbie, he's definitely, he hasn't proven himself. Neither guy's really proven themselves with too many great victories. But Kiefer Crosbie's a guy that I trust to move forward more. I think in any fight, that's a notch on the judges' scorecards or whatever. But still, overall, I'm picking Kevin Jousett to win. I consider him the bigger, stronger guy. I think he's going to win on the inside, whether it's with takedowns or with strikes once Kiefer Crosbie gets there. I think the only way he loses to Kiefer Crosbie is if Kiefer Crosbie, if A, knocks him out, which, you know, I haven't seen Jousett get knocked out, and B, they make it a boxing match and Kevin Jousett is not able to either do well on the far outside or get the fight to the inside. And I think he will. I think he will. I think Kiefer, again, he's an aggressive guy, and as you move forward, you get closer to your opponent and getting closer to a judoka. I think Kevin's going to suck him into a clinch, and if he can't straight out grapple him, I think he's going to rough him up. I've got Kevin Jousett winning. I do think he's going to get Kiefer Crosbie down, and even though he's never gotten a submission victory, Kevin Jousett, I think it's certainly possible here. I'd be interested in looking at the props, but really with no props to look at yet, I've got Kevin Jousett winning, and I bet on him, minus 155. I think physicality will be on his side for sure, and again, even though there's a lot of horseshit, doctor stoppage and whatever the fuck, I trust his durability more, Kevin Jousett. I think he's a tougher guy to submit, a tougher guy to knock out, and I also think he's overall the more dangerous guy, even though he's not the best overall fighter and doesn't always fight to his strengths. But I've got Kevin Jousett winning. Minus 155 is the bet. Kevin Jousett, I actually bet on him at minus 140, but I just saw they're at minus 155. I think he will win, but it's not something my heart is totally into, so it's not like it's I'm putting my life savings on this. I think both guys still have a lot to prove, and I have a lot to learn about both guys. But nevertheless, Kevin Jousett is the pick. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.